In just hours from now, the Lunar New Year begins in China. But celebrations this year will be much tamer than usual. That deadly coronavirus outbreak has authorities taking new, unprecedented, drastic action today as they try to keep a lid on it. World-famous attractions in Beijing and Shanghai are now closed, and 13 cities with a combined population equaling Canada's nearly in lockdown this morning. Let's begin with the latest numbers from Chinese officials. The number of dead stands at 26. Two of the people who've died are outside the infection hot zone, as it's known, in China's central Hubei province. There are at least 830 confirmed cases of people sickened by the virus. The number of reported illnesses outside mainland China, it's also up this morning. New cases in Singapore, South Korea and Japan have pushed the total to 19. In Canada, health officials say no one is being treated for the virus, but they are testing a number in the country. We have this new drone footage for you this morning. It's extraordinary, showing excavators working furiously as they break ground in Wuhan, the epicenter for the outbreak. They're racing to build a new 1,000-bed hospital to treat patients. And they say this one is modeling the one built in Beijing at the height of the SARS outbreak back in 2003. They plan to have this new hospital finished by next Wednesday. That's 5 days from now. Reporter Patrick Falk is in Beijing again for us this morning with the very latest on these expanded quarantine measures now in place right across China.
There is a question mark as to whether or not these efforts to quarantine people are really having the desired effect, particularly because of those two cases of fatalities outside Hubei province today that we learned about. One in Hebei, that's a particular concern for people here in Beijing because much of Beijing is surrounded by Hebei province. There was an 80-year-old man who had apparently visited family in Wuhan and came back. That was the first reported case outside of Hubei. And also in Heilongjiang, one man dying. Heilongjiang borders with Russia as well. So, you know, as far as we could gauge, according to some reports, authorities kind of get the impression that there is this weaker strain, milder form of the virus that has been spreading, and that's why the focus of containment has been on Hubei. This suggests that it perhaps goes further than that and that they may need to rethink their strategy altogether.
The situation now, Patrick, just extraordinary. More than 20 million people now affected by these various measures. And one of the things we're starting to hear from people as they speak is how concerned they are, how fearful they are of these measures and what's happening. How difficult is it for authorities, though, to police these lockdowns?
Yeah, well, we're hearing reports already that there do seem to be cracks in some of the efforts that they're trying to put in place. In particular, one story about a woman who managed to travel to France and get through checks. She's going to be presumably feeling some repercussions as a result of that, because authorities are taking this very seriously. But, you know, as you say, it's got to be an incredibly difficult thing to keep people penned in like this. We all are also hearing reports of people still arriving in Wuhan City. We're not entirely clear whether this is before or after the quarantine began and whether or not people are actually being allowed to enter the city. But they're saying, well, what do you do? It's Chinese New Year. It's tradition. We come and stay with our family, and that doesn't change. So they're putting themselves at risk. But certainly it's a difficult situation for authorities to get under control right now and make sure that they are able to contain the virus, which is what they're trying to do.
Patrick, as you mentioned, the Chinese New Year, we are on the eve of that. And we're hearing today that many attractions, I'm thinking of Disneyland, we're hearing about even McDonald's restaurants shutting again as part of this effort to contain the virus. So this holiday this year is likely to look very different. Can you give us some detail about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is about as miserable Chinese New Year as I can remember. I mean, people are in a state of panic here in Beijing. I mean, you're seeing cars in the streets, but there aren't a lot of people around at all. And those that are out are all covered in face masks. They are definitely concerned. They are avoiding crowds. Authorities here have told people not to gather in big crowds. Here in the capital, they have shut the Forbidden City, perhaps Beijing's, if not China's, most famous landmark, a place that a lot of tourists would be wanting to go and visit. But yeah, lots of attractions, the celebrations, those aren't going to be happening. In particular as well, maybe of interest to those in Canada. The Cirque du Soleil, they've cancelled their shows, even though they're 700 kilometers away from Ground Zero, Wuhan. So it does certainly seem as though what was meant to be a fun week of holiday is going to be a little bit of a dry period for China, and we don't know how long this is going to last exactly.
That's Patrick Falk in Beijing this morning. Now, a couple of additional notes. Chinese state television reporting there was a state council meeting on the virus today, and the conclusion was the spread has not been cut off despite the measures taken to date. So they do expect even more and more targeted measures. Patrick was also referring to the Cirque du Soleil. We reached out to them as well, and they have confirmed they've canceled their show in China, temporarily closing the shows in Guangzhou. So that is one of the things that they are doing as well, and we'll have more on that. And we're also getting, again, new numbers, just a little bit expanded from those which I was telling you. 886 confirmed cases, 422 suspected cases, 26 deaths in 30 provinces and regions. And again, of concern this morning was the fact that some of those deaths, too, now outside the main Hubei province, in which you find the epicenter of Wuhan.